All right, so let's talk a little bit about appeasement. And so I'm going to tell you a story about my daughter when she's 2, 3. Um, and I should preface by saying she was a really good kid. This was unusual, whether she's a really good kid because she's like a really good person, which is what I would hope, or she's a really good kid because she hated attention drawn to herself and was very shy. I, I don't know. But here's the deal. I need you to pay attention if you ever, ever conceive of the thought of having a child, because we're going to talk about appeasement in a different light, and you need to put this in this part of your brain that you can activate when you go into I'm responsible for a child mode, and it will save you a heap of trouble. But it also explains appeasement that was used as a diplomatic policy. So here's the deal. So when the Target in Germantown was new, we went to the Target in Germantown. And my daughter, as I said, 2 or 3, into Barbies at the time. We're in there, we're stopping. It's my wife and myself and my daughter, and she goes over to one of those big black sort of I don't know, towers that have those little balls in them, right? And they had little Barbie balls. And she walks over, she toddles over to it. She grabs a, whatever it was, $1.99 plastic Barbie ball, and then she goes like this and she throws it into the cart, and it went into the cart. I was like, hey, it went into the cart. That was kind of cool. And my wife's like, she doesn't need that. And I was like, okay, I was going to get it for her, but no biggie. So I reach in, pull it back out, put it back in the tower. She toddles over, gets another one, goes to throw it in, and I, of course, intercept it, put it back in the tower. And she then stamps her foot and proclaims, I want a Barbie ball. And I responded, I don't care. And so she then responded by saying it louder, like that was going to matter. I want a Barbie ball. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. And so then she plops down because there's this understanding if we leave the area without a Barbie ball, she ain't getting one. And she starts to scream, and then she starts to cry, and she starts to throw a bit of a tantrum. So we stop, and my wife looks at me and says, what do you do? I said, well, we should just keep walking. And so we do, and so she proceeds to get up and follow us, but continuing to cry and yell for a Barbie ball. All right. So eventually, I mean, it's getting worse and worse. I pick her up, I put her in the crate. Louder, louder, louder. It's not working. What do we do? So my wife finally, quite frustration, says, go get her the Barbie ball. And I'm like, oh no, no. Why can't I go get her the Barbie ball, which I would have got for her in the first place? Why can I not do it? You know the answer. The answer is because if we do that and we reinforce that behavior, right? Well, what's going to happen? Every time they want something, there's going to be screaming and crying, because if I scream, cry, and throw enough of a fit, you're going to give in and give me what you want. That is called appeasement. I'm appeasing you. I'm giving you what you want in order to calm you down, to change your behavior. And in this case, it's not good. Not good. So I'm like, no. So finally I say, okay, I'll take her out to the truck. So I pick her up and I'm carrying her out. And my wife is Asian. So my daughter's a Asian. And she looks nothing like me. And as I'm heading out the door, right on cue in front of the security guard, she screams, I don't want you. I want my mommy. And I was stopped. And, fortunately, when he asked her, she knew who I was. She's like, yeah, it's my dad. And so I took her out and put her in the car, and she continued to cry. However, next time we went out and she asked for something, and I said, no. There was no tears, there was no crying, there was no screaming, right? So put back in that part of your brain for when you're responsible for a child. Appeasement, no. You can't react with appeasement. The other way I want you to think about appeasement, so that's one way. The other way I want you to think about appeasement is this. You've had the teacher, right, who stands up and says, if you do that, I will give you a detention. If you do that, I will suspend you, right? And people react to that, right? They usually back down. But after a while, if they keep threatening to and keep threatening to, then people are just like, they're not going to. This is not something they're going to do. They're not going to do it. So that, right? Now, occasionally they may get pushed to the point where they do. And then that becomes, that becomes a surprise. Oh, but usually people ignore it. They begin to ignore the threats. So those are sort of the two ways I would think about appeasement, and now we're going to apply that to Europe. Like if you ever run into my daughter, don't tell her I compared her as a 3-year-old to Hitler, please. That wouldn't be good. All right, guys. Thank you very much.